Both William and Catherine watched Suits. I mean, they knew exactly who Meghan Markle was.
What rubbish journalists we were to not realise that Harry had stepped out with this glamorous actress as she was at the time.
And I think people were so excited publicly as well because Harry was so popular back then.
You had Hollywood sparkle
Yep.
with the British monarchy.
Was the palace ready for Meghan? Was the country, was the world ready for this bombshell relationship? Welcome to Royal Exclusive Rewind, where we delve back into the files and relive some of the highlights and lowlights of royal family history. Remember to subscribe to us here on the Royal Exclusive YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. In the summer of 2016, Prince Harry took several mysterious flights between Toronto, Canada and London, UK. Toronto was also coincidentally the filming location for the popular show Suits, where a glamorous actress played paralegal Rachel Zane. The news broke a few months later. I'm Matt Wilkinson, the royal editor of The Sun, and joining me on this week's trip down memory lane is the Daily Mirror's royal editor and author Russell Myers and news.com.au royal correspondent Bronte Coy to discuss When Harry Met Meghan. Probably one of the most, dramatic relationships that we've seen in the royal family in recent years. But Russell, you outlined this in your recent book. Take us back to 2016. Harry was on his own. He was quite lonely. We had William and Catherine. They were the superstars. What was going on?
Well, they were the superstars, but there was sort of this creation that they were a trio, that Harry sort of followed them around like a gooseberry. And there was a little bit of that because, he was the one sort of popping over to their place, stealing their leftovers from the fridge and their milk. And the palace were wondering what to do with Harry. Here was this new, young, vibrant couple that were going to be the future of the monarchy. And Harry had been unlucky in love. He'd fallen foul of the media in his view that the loves of his life had run a mile after not wanting to be involved within the royal family. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, he was set up on a blind date. And it was a love story. And he fell head over heels for Meghan Markle.
Because we didn't know this at the time. This was all going on in the background. What rubbish journalists we were to not realise that Harry had stepped out with this glamorous actress as she was at the time. What was Meghan doing? Because we know about Harry's upbringing. He was brought up in palaces and he was pictured from a very young age. Where did Meghan come from? She was from Los Angeles.
She was from Los Angeles and she was a Hollywood baby. Her dad had worked in TV, he was a lighting director, so she'd always been around that sort of scene and clearly got the taste for it at an early age and decided she wanted to be an actor herself. And she has talked about that, how she there's a lot of hustle involved in that sort of scene and you have to really try to get yourself out there and in front of casting directors and on shows. And so she'd spent so much time in that arena. And so by the time she met Harry, she had just landed a spot in the ensemble cast of Suits, which, by the way, I did watch back then, and I was very excited when this news broke because I did love that show. But yeah, she met Harry, and at this point her career was taking off because Suits was a massive hit, especially in those early seasons. But she was a woman who very much had established herself and knew who she was and had been married previously and knew what she wanted out of a relationship from the way that Harry has went on to describe it in his book.
Now, before we all found out, before the front page news that happened in later in that year, Harry had told William and Catherine, Russell, and you explained this in your book. I mean,
well, I do. I went to repeat what William said because it was an expletive, but he basically said, "You must be joking." Yeah. And
was that in a good way or was that in a horrified way?
No, it was in an absolutely astonishing way that he'd managed to get together with this beautiful young actress. And both William and Catherine watched Suits. I mean, they knew exactly who Meghan Markle was, so it was more of astonishment. When you look at whether there has been a lot said about Meghan coming into the family. Was she rubbing people up the wrong way? That she came in like a whirlwind? But there was a lot of excitement. There certainly was a bit of standoffishness at the start because she is very, very different to other members of the royal family. She's very different to Catherine. But there was a lot of excitement. Meghan Markle had a career of her own. She's a fantastic orator. I mean, we've seen her speak publicly on numerous occasions. She'd worked with the UN. She was invested with the troops and veterans. I mean, it was literally the perfect package. And there was an appetite for both William and Catherine to think as well that, if this is the real deal, this relationship, regardless of William telling him to slow down, if this is the real deal, then he will set upon his own path, and it would be good for the royal family, not just being under our feet all the time.
And I think people were so excited publicly as well because Harry was so popular back then. In 2016, the year he met Meghan, he was a wildly popular member of the family, and people had seen these romances not really last. And I think people wanted to see Diana's second son, find love and find happiness. And we were also, 2016, crucially, just to take it out into the entertainment sphere for a moment, into Meghan's territory, was a really celebrity-obsessed moment. This is like the rise of the Kardashians. This was a moment when celebrities reigned supreme. And to bring those together, to have this extremely popular, good-looking young member of the royal family with the star of this big show, this glamorous Hollywood actress, was a hugely exciting moment, and that's why everyone got so excited about it. But in the coverage, which is surprising how it was reflected upon later by Harry, because I do believe very much at the beginning, especially, the coverage of them was so positive.
Totally positive.
People loved it. It was so glamorous and fun, and it was this new energy.
You had Hollywood sparkle with the British monarchy, loved and revered around the world, the majesty of what the royal family is all about. And the way that Americans really do showpieces great. And I think that marriage was really exciting. I mean, I looked at a lot of the coverage and I remember writing it for the book as well. And it was overwhelmingly positive. Of course, then you got into the narrative of certain publications talking about her biracial heritage and comment pieces, stupid stories about avocados and Mexican cartels. But in the first instance, when they got together leading up to the marriage and beyond, it was overwhelmingly positive, and there was a real buzz around the palaces.
Well, famously, Camilla Tominey was the reporter on the Sunday Express who broke the story because everyone's like, wow. There's a front page story to Sunday Express saying Harry is dating Meghan Markle. Famously, she didn't phone the palace. So they ran the story without kind of tipping off the palace. Do you think that part of this, the drama, the fallout and stuff like that, is that almost this relationship was almost uncontrollable? It was almost like the palace were unable to, once this train had started, they couldn't control what was going to happen.
There was such an appetite for any information about Harry's personal life at that point, especially. So it's again why it did begin a frenzy. But again, as you say, I understand that he was frustrated because he wanted privacy, but it was an overwhelmingly positive response in those initial stages. But I do think that you could see from the way that Harry released that statement, that extraordinary statement very early doors, basically warning everyone to back off Meghan, to paraphrase it. I think that made it clear that even though it had sort of blown up very quickly overnight and there was so much attention on them, he was extremely serious about this relationship that had only been going for a few months.
Because he had, had previous relationships, but the minute that statement came out, warning the press about certain intrusions, you suddenly realised that this one was Meghan was going to stay.
Well, he didn't tell his father or his brother he was going to make that statement.
Oh, really?
And he got together with the shared press team of himself and William and Catherine and put it out himself. And he was actually aggrieved that his father and his brother wouldn't help him put out a statement. So he did it himself. And that tells you how serious he was. And some of the commentary around that time was pretty disgusting. And it did affect both himself and Meghan. Valentine Lowe told in his book about how Meghan had put pressure on him to say, if this isn't sorted, if you're not going to defend me in public, then I'll walk. And I think that obviously he was very worried about that. Also, I mean, there was a whole load of material about Meghan available in the public sphere. I mean, you just needed to look at all the things she'd been in. She had a very public profile. She had an Instagram profile as well. So it was a ready-made package for the world's media to sort of delve into.
Well, as I say, the story was broken. It was a huge surprise. The palace weren't aware that it was actually coming out, is what we're led to believe. Were we ready for Meghan? Was the palace ready for Meghan? Was the country, was the world ready for this bombshell relationship?
Ooh, It really did. It did really kick off a new era of royal events that we probably couldn't really have imagined at the time. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, she was so established in her career, and when she entered into the family, it was a different sort of pairing than we'd seen in that way, because, you know, with Catherine and William, for example, they met in university, and so they very much grew up together. Meghan knew what she wanted, and she knew what she wouldn't accept. And as many people in their 30s get to that point, you know, you figure out who you are as a person. And I think that coming into the palace, which is such an established setup, and there is such a clear hierarchy of how it all works. They're a royal family, but they're also a business. I think that and from everything Harry said as well, that made for just not the most graceful collaboration from the get-go.
But William and Catherine's relationship was revealed on the front page. It was the son. They went skiing, wasn't it? You've explained it in your book.
Yeah, they explained that they weren't very happy about it.
Yeah.
They certainly,
but that
yeah, of course,
survived.
it was always going to come out.
Yeah.
And William, in the book, I explained about how William went into the pub when there was going to be an engagement with Charles and William in Gloucestershire, and the reporters and the photographers were having a meal and a drink just before the next day's engagement. And William walked in and had a drink with the reporters and the photographers and said, listen, we're not going to go back to those old days of you hounding my family, of my relationship being played out in the press. I mean, this is a man who was deeply scarred of his parents, or the disintegration of his parents' relationship being played out in the media, the focus being so centred on him and Harry and their future as well. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting when in my research, you look at the difference in handling the media that both William has and how Harry has. I mean, Harry has been so vocal. He has taken large sections of British media to court, and whereas William has, throughout history, dealt with it in a much more subtle way.
That's such an interesting part of your book as well, I was going to say, because exactly as you said, it's effectively the same action, whereas you're speaking directly to the press, but one is going via billions of people, and the other one is a conversation face to face. And they're very strong words he's used in this story, and I found that such an interesting passage, because exactly that, it really highlights the difference between both men.
We'd said before that there was no appetite for the palace to bring the royal correspondents in and to say, this is Harry. I mean, we'd never sat down with Harry before. This is Harry and this is Meghan. They're now engaged, and we thought we would have an audience with them. This is the future of them. They're going to take a little bit of time out. They're going to live here. They're going to work out what they want to do for their charitable endeavours and their work. And there was never that relationship. And I think that was probably not a great start. You have to have a relationship on both sides. And Harry, had a different attitude about the whole situation.
Yeah, it feels like those early days, these, flying back and forth to Toronto, then it being, unveiled on the front page of a newspaper, kind of really kicked off or kick-started the problems that they had over the next couple of months, the battles they had with the press and the palace. It seemed to lay the foundations for that.
Well, Harry had a lot of defensiveness, and it is understandable because he has explained it goes back to what he experienced as a young child, witnessing it with his mother, and you can understand it on that level. But I think that as soon as this began, this media frenzy around he and Meghan began, he instantly felt that protectiveness and that defensiveness, but it did create an uneasy situation with the press then from that moment onwards.
Yeah. And it's still going on now.
It is still going on.
We can testify. We're a testament to that. Oh, well, thanks, guys. It's really nice to have a little trip down memory lane for that little part in history where Harry and Meghan met, and we're all seeing, what's happening now. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Matt.
Right, that's all we have time for on Royal Exclusive Rewind. But join me next time for some more royal nostalgia when we open the files and relive another iconic moment.